Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ at the Super Bowl, presented by Jersey Mike's. Subs, a sub above. Take a look at Ryan Wilson's latest mock. There's some trades, folks. And the Colts go up to number 1 and take C.J. Stroud. Bears move down to 4. And then you also see Tampa Bay getting into the top 3, taking Will Levis. So we're going quarterback with the first 3 picks. Back here with Rick Spielman, Brady, Quinn, and Pete Prisco. Brady, I'll start with you. The Colts go up to number 1, and C.J. Stroud over Bryce Young.
And I could see it. I think a lot of people are going to be enamored by his accuracy from the pocket, especially a clean pocket, and then what he showcased versus the best team in the country in Georgia. His ability to run, take off, throw on the run, all the sorts of things I think you wanted to see from him, and maybe he didn't see it enough consistently. You saw it in that one game. And so if that ends up skyrocketing him in the eyes of a team like the Colts or whoever else would trade up to get him, I could see that being the case. You don't have the size concerns like some people do with Bryce Young. He's got a strong enough arm, maybe not as strong as Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, but it's plenty strong enough. So he answered a lot of questions with his final game of college football. It was a good time to play his best.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'm really wondering is why didn't he show that all year? Because he went up against the number 1 defense of maybe the century with Georgia and went and probably had his best game of the year. And there's no question about the physical ability, but everyone was asking, why don't you use your legs? Is he not athletic enough? And that kind of dispelled that myth that he actually can make plays with his legs.
Well, I mean, it was terrible against Northwestern in the conditions. I know it was a bad day, but I mean, it was awful that day.
Yeah, but no one was good that day.
Again, he played with receivers the last couple of years that are all making plays in the NFL. It's hard evaluation. He's a tough evaluation because you don't know is that a one-off or is that who he is.
Right. Well,
that's the tough thing.
The toughest part I think about his evaluation to me is if you looked at his numbers from a clean pocket versus under pressure, under duress, not necessarily the blitz, but when he's got a guy in his face, when he needs to move, when he needs to do something with the football, his completion percentage drops, quarterback rating drops dramatically. And I think that's the problem is if he is taken by the Colts, that might be an exception because they actually have a pretty good offensive line.
It wasn't good last year.
Even though it didn't play well last year, that might be one of the few exceptions. Some of these other teams, that could be a struggle.
But one of the key traits for quarterbacks coming out in the draft now is can they make off-schedule throws?
Right.
Because that's all the quarterbacks that are having success in the NFL right now. And he hasn't proven that until just that last game. And is that an exception to the rule or is that a rule?
Would that be enough for you? If you're looking at him and you're in one of those spots, you're saying, yeah, one game I saw he's got the ability to do it. Now we just got to coach it into him more?
I got about 2 months before I have to give you my final.
No, you don't. Right now. Make the decision.
You don't make it. There's still plenty of the ways to come here.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to get all the information.
Mine 14 times before that.
Put him on the spot and make him get it there. All right, so we saw that, of course, then with C.J. Stroud at 1, Bryce Young at 2. Then the question at 3 is maybe not necessarily Will Levis at 3, but let me just tell you with the draft compensation that Ryan had, that means Arizona gets a second round this year and then a first in 2024. Rick, I'll start with you because I know you're high on Will Levis.
It's not enough draft compensation.
It's not enough, right?
No.
Right off the bat.
Right off the bat, that's not real.
That's not real
reality.
life. It's not real life.
That's not reality. But if you look at all from where Tampa would have to move up all the way to get there, you have to look at all the draft compensation and how many first-round picks. How much did San Francisco give up to go get Trey Lance?
Yeah.
So that's not a reality. But let's play Fantasyland because Pete's on the show here. So.
He's on the committee.
Why am I Fantasyland? I deal in realities. Look, that's not enough. And could the Bucs go make that move? Sure, they could. If you fall in love with a quarterback and you don't have one, you have to do everything you can to get one. So you go make a move. Is Will Levis that guy? Major questions about Will. In fact, major questions about the entire quarterback class. How about that? I don't love this quarterback class. I think the best guy in the class is Bryce Young, and he's 190 pounds. And so there's not questions about him?
No.
What do you mean there's not questions? He's 190 pounds. There's questions about him.
There was questions about Steph Curry, and you keep getting on me because I'm making that.
Stop making that comparison, please.
Yeah, because they said the same thing. He was too small. He's probably one of the best point guards to ever play in the NBA. This will be the same thing when Bryce Young's come to the NFL.
I feel confident saying this. If Tampa does move up this much and give up more draft compensation than maybe what Ryan's got in this one,
I would take that deal.
One thing I would hope is, Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Bucs organization, they need to give him 3 years.
Yeah.
If everyone's trying to look for the next Josh Allen, then give him 3 years.
How long did it take Josh Allen?
3 years. And then, as you know, you're part of the transaction with Stephon Diggs, and
right.
then they get Stephon Diggs. you better be able to have that for your quarterback if you want him to take that sort of leap. Because as Pete's saying, there are questions about all these guys. With Will Levis, go back to last year, played better than this most recent season. Now, granted, he was banged up, working through a lot of things. Offensive line play was awful, but the reality is
receivers.
different OCs too.
Yeah.
The reality is you still have to be accountable for what you put out there in tape. So there's questions, there's concerns. I just think if you're looking for that next Josh Allen, I don't care who it is, you're not going to find one because there's only one Josh Allen. But Will Levis and Anthony Richardson have that upside. I think the reality is those organizations, whoever drafts them, need to build around them and be patient.
Ryan Wilson's just off the set here. He's not going to be listening to us. But, Ryan, you didn't give up draft compensation for the Bucs there at 3. Just giving you a note for the next mock draft.
You know what?
CBSSports.com.
That's like Howie Roseman taking advantage of Rick Spielman when he traded for Sam Bradford.
I had no choice. I had no quarterback. We were going to the NFC Championship game.
Oh, you saw the list there with the Bears going down to 4. So Will Anderson Jr., Pete Prisco. So, again, if they had stayed at 1, a lot of people think Jalen Carter, but under Ryan Wilson's, again, latest mock draft, Will Anderson at 4 to the Bears.
I think people are going to go make the move to go get a quarterback. I do. I think there's going to be some jockeying up there to go get the quarterbacks because if you don't have one, you're desperate. That's obvious by who's playing in these Super Bowls and who's playing in championship games. But as far as Will Anderson, okay, I'm going to go on record and say I think he's a tad overrated. I think he's a really good football player. But the comparisons to Von Miller and Derek Thomas, I don't see it. There's not that same explosive ability. He's a good player. And we talked about it before, Brady, he's just not that twitchy and explosive off the edge.
Yeah, and I told you, my biggest or hardest thing in watching him is, he makes everything look so easy. And that's something that you obviously want to see, but you kind of get caught in saying, okay, is it who he's going up against? Is it sometimes the scheme and allowing him some of those opportunities in one-on-ones? Is he just that good? And some of it could be he's just that good. I'm with you, though, and I don't know that I see the same type of twitch that you see from a guy like Von Miller. He reminds me a bit as far as Trevon Walker a little bit last year. He's got all the things that you're looking for. They played him kind of out of position, down inside at times, which I didn't like. I think he's better than Trevon Walker's going to be, but I do have a little bit of a concern as far as the immediate impact that he's going to have starting day one. But I think he's a guy who's going to go top 6 picks. No
Absolutely.
doubt.
Okay, well, I'm going to disagree with you both, and I apologize to you, Brady, because I usually just disagree with Pete. But
that's okay.
I'm going to have to throw you in the mix here because of Will Anderson, because Pete's going to say it's an Alabama kid, so of course I'm going to like him. But when you watched his 21 tape and when you had him out as a wide 9 and let him get up the field, he had the quickest first step I've seen out of anyone. And I thought coming out this summer and watching the 21 tape, he was the best defensive player that Alabama has produced in a long time. Then when you look at how they played him this year, when they reduce him down, when he's head up on a 5 technique or he's in between the offensive tackle and the tight end and he has to take on double teams, that's not what his game is. He's not that effective. He's a big lower body, a lot thicker than people are going to see, that they think when they see him in person, but he's got to develop in his upper body. But if you play him the right way, and I talked about this earlier on our podcast, smart coaches figure out what these guys do best and what their strengths and then adjust their scheme accordingly. And I think Will Anderson is going to have a heck of an NFL career because someone's going to use him the right way.
He's going to be a good player. Nobody's denying that. It's just I don't see Von Miller at all. I don't see Derek Thomas. He's more Khalil Mack, except he's not as big as Khalil Mack. So I don't know.
He's taller than Khalil Mack.
He's not as thick as Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack's a powerful man. I don't know. And when you talk about last year, I went back this morning and watched him last year. He was always opposite the really good tackles at times too. If you notice that, he didn't work against Cross last year much at all.
The other thing is I always thought he got a good jump off of the ball, but it wasn't necessarily so much the explosion. It was more of like him timing up the snap. It seemed like he kind of had that down. And again, not to go back to the Von Miller comparison, but Von, I thought, had just an assortment of pass rush moves. I think Will Anderson has a number of them, but he just didn't seem as developed as Von Miller was when he came to the league. But again, you're comparing him to a future Hall of Famer.
Right.
I think Will Anderson.
Well, if you're picking him first overall, you hope he's a future Hall of Famer.
Is he better than the guys? If you had to pick last year with Walker and Hutchinson, would you take Will Anderson over those two?
I would take him over Walker. I don't know if I would take him over Hutchinson.
What's easier to say than on retrospect because of how Hutchinson played, it'd be close. Like for me, it'd be
they're
right
all the
there
same.
between the two.
I
think the thing that always surprised me about Hutchinson was he's so much bigger than you think when you see him in person. You really can't appreciate it until you actually see him in person. You go, wow, he's a lot bigger and taller and longer because he moves like a smaller guy for how big he really is.
To follow up on your guys' point, whether it's going to be an Anderson, a Levis, or Josh Allen, when there's that 2-year tape when it's like good, bad, good, Rick, I'll start with you. How do you process what you take out of that? For instance, someone had a good junior year, not a good senior year, or vice versa that way?
Those are the things that you're going to try to ask the player when you're interviewing. Was it, like we talked about Will Levis, was it the coaching change and he had a new offensive coordinator? Was it the offensive line? Was it receivers?
Injuries.
Yeah. Was it injuries? What it was. So you have to try to dig down and why maybe he didn't play as consistently in 21 or 20 as he did in 21 and 22. So you go back and try to get those answers. The other thing that you'll start to put into place is once you get to the combine, once you get to the interview process, you start getting all these analytic scores, the psychological test scores, the intelligence scores, the cognitive learning scores, and then you can maybe start developing a pattern on why. Was he, a lot of guys we got really concerned about if they weren't very good, then all of a sudden their senior year they become a one-year wonder or one-year hit. Is that, and then those guys have a tendency to get overdrafted as well.
Let me ask you this, because you're asking the quarterback all these questions. And at the same time, I'm sitting there listening to it as a former draft prospect going, well, I can't throw any guys under the bus. I know they don't want to hear me make an excuse, so I'm just going to take the blame for everything and say it's on me. I got to play better.
But that was a high character trait.
Well, because I'm going to ask you then, so how do you decipher and how do you dig through what the player's saying to you and then finding out what their truth really was?
Because I have a sheet with every background and every source that we've talked over with the last 2 years, so I know that player better than that player probably knows himself. So what you do is try to ask a lot of open-ended questions to see what type of rabbit hole that player will take you down. And is he a blame the team guy, or is he going to take responsibility? And you know this, especially at the quarterback position, whether it's your fault or not. We saw it with Josh Wilson this year with the Jets, that was one of the most disastrous press conferences after a game that I've ever seen. Quarterback position, head coach position, always take the responsibility whether it's your fault or not.
Would you draft me?
No.
Based on my personality?
No.
Why?
I mean, maybe because one of your mantras is "What's good for me is good for me."
But I would show up, work hard, do all my stuff. I would do every single thing possible to make myself
but you would complain about it the entire time.
No. You would draft me.
You're not. You're the guy that's not good enough.
See, I think we get to paralysis by analysis. That's what we get to. You go way too overboard. These psychological tests you give, you have no earthly idea what's inside a human being by some psychological test.
Do.
No, you don't. No, you do not. Until push comes to shove, you have no idea. It's paralysis by analysis.
You call me old school. You're going back to like 1950 scouting. You're still writing the draft cards on a piece of paper.
You put the tape on, watch the tape, interview the guy, sift through his crap, and then find out if he can play. It's really not that complicated.
Is fun.
You complicate everything.
I can do this every day.
Just football.
All right, we're going to take another break here, but we want to remind about what you can get from Rick there with the first pick with Ryan Wilson, conversations about the draft process, all that good stuff. They just taped their podcast here on this set earlier this morning. Scan that QR code and check them out today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.